Life in the new neighborhood seemed calm at first. The lawns were uniform, the fences freshly painted, and the air of order was kept alive by the ever-watchful Homeowners Association. To the average person, it looked like a safe and quiet place to raise a family. But under the surface, the HOA thrived on control, feeding off fines, warnings, and intimidation. The family's teenage son, just 16, loved to spend his afternoons training outside. He had dreams bigger than the neighborhood, ambitions that stretched towards service and discipline. His backyard became his gym, with makeshift obstacles, pull-up bars, and rope climbs. To him, it was harmless training. To the HOA, it was chaos, a violation of their picture-perfect rules. The boy's training caught the attention of old family friends, men who had once served as Navy SEALs. They admired his determination and offered to mentor him, visiting on weekends to guide his workouts. Their presence was quiet and respectful, but their strong builds, sharp movements, and military demeanor unsettled the HOA board members. Instead of seeing mentors, the HOA saw intruders. Whispers spread through the cul-de-sac. Board members pointed from behind windows, inventing stories about dangerous gatherings. The HOA president became convinced the family was running some kind of underground militia camp. Instead of asking questions, they moved to act. After weeks of writing warnings that went ignored, the HOA made a drastic choice. They contacted the police, filing complaints of disturbances and illegal assemblies. On a sunny afternoon, a black and white patrol car rolled up the street. Neighbors peeked through curtains, sensing drama. The HOA president watched smugly, ready to see the family brought down a notch. But the officers had no idea who they were about to encounter in the backyard. The stage was set for a clash that would spiral beyond anything the HOA imagined. The officers approached cautiously, their radios crackling as they moved past the front door. The HOA president waved them toward the backyard, eager to see the so-called militia caught in the act. The sounds of exertion carried over the fence. Boots hit the ground. Rope fibers strained as hands climbed upward. The crisp voice of instruction cut through the air. The officers pushed through the gate and stopped cold. The scene before them was not what they had been told. The teenage boy sprinted across the yard, sweat pouring as he leapt over wooden obstacles. Two men, broad-shouldered and disciplined, guided him with quiet precision. They moved with efficiency, scanning their surroundings instinctively, their posture revealing years of training. These weren't random trespassers. The officers recognized it instantly. This was the bearing of military professionals. The HOA president's smugness faltered as the officers hesitated. They had expected disorder, but what they found was mentorship. The men introduced themselves, calmly explaining their presence. They were Navy SEALs, retired, but committed to teaching discipline to the next generation. The boy wasn't disturbing the peace. He was learning resilience, strength, and focus under their guidance. The police relaxed, realizing there was no crime to pursue. But the HOA president fumed, insisting that action be taken. The officers, however, had no grounds. With little more than a warning to keep things down, they left, leaving the president red-faced and humiliated. Yet humiliation only fueled the HOA's obsession. If the police wouldn't act, they would find another way to shut down what they viewed as a challenge to their authority. The seeds of escalation had been planted. The failed police visit only deepened the HOA's resolve. To them, it wasn't about noise or gatherings anymore. It was about control. If they allowed one family to defy their rules, others might follow. The board members rallied, determined to crush what they labeled as unacceptable behavior. Daily notices piled up in the mailbox. Claims of code violations became increasingly absurd. The family was accused of unauthorized construction, safety hazards, and even disturbing the neighborhood aesthetic. None of it held weight, but the constant harassment wore thin. The SEALs, though, urged patience. They reminded the boy that standing firm in the face of pressure was part of real training. Still, the HOA wasn't satisfied. They called the police again and again, each time spinning new lies about noise, violence, or gatherings. Each time, the officers left embarrassed when they realized nothing illegal was happening. Slowly, the neighbors began to see the truth. Many grew sympathetic, realizing the family wasn't disruptive. They were being targeted. But the board doubled down, threatening lawsuits and heavy fines. Their arrogance blinded them. What they didn't realize was that the SEALs had resources of their own. Veterans' networks stretched wide, and once word spread, the HOA's actions began drawing attention far beyond the cul-de-sac. What the board thought was a local power struggle was about to explode onto a much larger stage. The HOA's threats reached a boiling point. Letters demanded that the family dismantle the backyard course, ban visitors, and restrict the boys' training. Failure to comply, they warned, would result in legal action. But the family didn't stand alone anymore. The SEALs had contacted advocacy groups, attorneys, and fellow veterans. What started as whispers grew into organized support. Suddenly, the HOA was not only fighting one family, but facing the weight of a community that respected service and sacrifice. Legal representatives challenged the HOA's authority, questioning the validity of their claims. News outlets caught wind of the story, intrigued by reports of an HOA targeting veterans and a teenager under mentorship. The narrative shifted quickly. A power-hungry HOA bullying a family for no reason other than control. Neighbors who once stayed silent stepped forward, voicing their frustration with the board's heavy-handed tactics. The HOA's grip loosened as support for the family swelled. Their carefully built image of order and authority crumbled under the spotlight of public scrutiny. The board tried to backpedal, insisting they only wanted peace in the neighborhood. But it was too late. Their actions had revealed their true nature, and they had awakened opposition far stronger than themselves. The boy continued his training, more motivated than ever, while his mentors stood proudly by his side. The HOA had wanted control, but what they gained was notoriety. And as the story reached its climax, the question remained. Would the board survive the backlash they had created? Under pressure from attorneys, residents, and public opinion, the HOA began to fracture. Board members turned on one another, some insisting they had gone too far, others determined to push harder. Meetings devolved into shouting matches, while residents demanded accountability. The family, once isolated, now had allies across the neighborhood. Veterans groups organized demonstrations of support, filling the street with American flags and signs condemning the HOA's harassment. Local media captured it all, amplifying the embarrassment. Fines issued to the family were overturned. Citations were dismissed. Each loss chipped away at the HOA's authority. Even the police, tired of being dragged into false complaints, filed reports against the board for wasting resources. The once feared HOA president now found themselves mocked, their credibility shattered. Their desperate attempts to justify their actions only highlighted their arrogance. Instead of enforcing control, they had exposed their pettiness to the entire community. The teenage boy, once seen as a nuisance, became a symbol of resilience. His dedication, guided by his mentors, inspired others. What had begun as harassment now turned into a story of strength overcoming pettiness, and for the HOA the end was near. The final blow came swiftly. After months of pressure, legal rulings stripped the HOA of its authority to enforce many of its rules. Residents voted to dissolve the board, tired of the drama and the misuse of power. The HOA president resigned in disgrace, leaving behind a legacy of failure. The family's home, once under siege, became a place of pride. The backyard obstacle course remained, not as a violation, but as a reminder of perseverance. The teenage boy continued his training, supported by mentors who had stood against the HOA's aggression. His dream of service grew stronger, fueled by the lessons of resilience he had lived through. Neighbors, once silent, now greeted the family warmly. The SEALs were respected, their presence seen not as threatening but as honorable. The cul-de-sac that had once been divided by fear found new unity through shared defiance of tyranny. The HOA had underestimated one thing: the strength that comes when ordinary people stand up to entitled authority. They thought they could crush a teenager's spirit with letters, fines, and threats. Instead, they revealed their weakness and destroyed themselves in the process. The family didn't just win their battle, they exposed the cracks in the system and inspired others to stand firm. What began as harassment ended as a story of triumph, where resilience, unity, and discipline defeated entitlement and control, and so, the neighborhood finally found peace. Not through the HOA's rules, but through the freedom reclaimed when those rules collapsed.